Hello everyone, I'm your narrator from Grave Hush, and I'm here to help you unwind tonight. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now get cozy, take a deep breath. Let your body sink into the stillness. It's time to relax and let the story carry you into sleep. Our first story tonight. Let's begin. Omnigel, your antidote to the poison of reality. It's weightless, carbohydrate-free, and keto-friendly. It's non-toxic, locally sourced, and cruelty-minimized. It's silky smooth, rejuvenating, invigorating, handcrafted, all natural, exclusive. For the everyman, state-of-the-art, older than time itself. The executive abruptly paused his list of platitudes. I think he caught on to my sharp inhale and slightly pursed lips. I swallowed the yawn as politely as I could, keeping a smile plastered to my face in the meantime. Seemed like the damage had already been done, though. I heard his wingtip shoes tapping against the linoleum floor. His chiseled jawline clenched and his eyes narrowed. Sure, my disinterest was maybe a bit rude, but in my defense, I ain't the one investing in the product. Barely had the capital to invest in the 6 to 8 Miller Lights that nursed me to sleep the night prior. No, I was the guinea pig. Guinea pigs don't need the sales pitch. Please continue, I stammered. His features loosened, but they didn't unwind completely. It's Omnigel, your antidote to the poison of reality, he finished, each syllable throbbing with a borderline religious zeal. I clapped until it became clear that he didn't want me to clap, face grimacing in response. So I bit my lip and waited for instruction. The impeccably dressed executive walked the length of the boardroom, his right hand trailing along the table's polished mahogany until he towered over me. I rose to meet him, but his palm met my collarbone and pushed me back into my seat. "Don't get up," he said, now grinning from ear to ear. "Let me ask you a question, Frederick. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to be something? Are you ready to cast off the shackles of hopeless mediocrity, your plebeian birthright, vulgar in every sense of the word, and ascend to something greater? More importantly, do you believe I am merciful enough to grant that to you?" I didn't quite understand what he was asking me, but I became uncomfortably aware of my body as he monologued. My stagnant, garlic-ridden breath, the cherry-red gingivitis crawling along my gum line, my ghoulish hunchback and my bulging pot belly, the sensation of my tired heart beating against my flimsy rib cage. Eventually, I spat out a response, but I did not get up and I did not meet his gaze. "Well, sir, I'm just here to get paid, and I apologize. I'm not used to the whole dog and pony show. Usually I just take the pills and report the side effects, but I'm appreciative of—" He cut me off. "That's exactly the answer I was looking for, Frederick. I'll have my people swing around and pick you up. We'll begin tonight. Your new lodging should be nearly ready," he remarked. "I'm not going home," I asked. "No, you're not going home, Frederick," he replied. "What about my car?" The tapping of his Wingtips started up again as he dialed his cell phone. "What car?" he muttered. The car I used to drive there, obviously. A beat-up sedan that was the lone blemish in a parking lot otherwise gleaming with BMWs and Lamborghinis. I was going to explain that I needed my car, but he was chatting with someone by the time I worked up the courage to speak again. It seemed important. I didn't want to interrupt. Could figure out how to get my car later, I supposed. The limousine was nice, undeniably. Don't think I'd been in a limo since prom. That said, I didn't appreciate the secrecy. No one informed me of our destination. Nobody mentioned it was a goddamned hour outside the city. After 30 minutes passed, I was knocking on the black-tinted partition, asking the driver if they had any updates or an ETA, but they didn't respond. I stepped out of the parked car, loose gravel crunching under my feet. The executive had already arrived, and he was leaning against a separate, longer, more luxurious-appearing limousine. He sprang up and strolled towards me, arms outstretched as if he were going to pull me into a hug or something. Thankfully, he just wrapped one arm around my shoulder, his Rolodex ticking in my ear. "Frederick, happy to see you made it." Well, thanks, sir, but where are we?" I scanned my surroundings. There was a warehouse, this monstrous bastion of rusted steel and disintegrating concrete that seemed to pierce the skyline. And little else. No trees, no telephone poles, no billboards. Just flat, dirt-coated earth in nearly every direction. I couldn't even tell where the unpaved gravel connected to a proper road. It just sort of evaporated into the horizon. The executive began sauntering towards the warehouse, tugging me along. He winked and said, "Well, my boy, you're home, of course." "What do you mean? And what does this have to do with Ovigel?" "Omnigel," he quickly corrected. The word plummeted from his tongue like a guillotine, razor sharp and heavy with judgment. I shut my mouth and focused on marching in lockstep with the executive. A few silent seconds later, we were in front of a door. I didn't even notice there was a door until he was reaching for the knob. The entrance was tiny and without signage, barely a toenail on the foot of the colossus, blending seamlessly into the corrugated metal wall. He twisted the knob and pushed forward, moving aside and gesturing for me to enter first. The creaking of its ungreased hinges emanated into the warehouse. The inside was dark but not lightless. Strangely, tufts of fake grass drifted over the bottom of the frame, shiny plastic blades wavering in a gentle breeze that I couldn't feel from the outside. "Let me know if anything looks familiar," he whispered. Fearful of upsetting him again, I wandered into the belly of the beast, but I was wholly ill-prepared for what awaited me. I crossed the threshold. Before long, I couldn't move. Bewilderment stitched my feet to the ground. When he claimed I was home, he hadn't lied. No figure of speech, no metaphor. It looked like I was standing on my neighbor's lawn. I crept along the astroturf until I was standing in the middle of a road. My head swung like a pendulum, peering from one side of the street to the other. I felt woozy and stumbled back. Fortunately, the wall of the warehouse was there to catch me. Everything had been painstakingly recreated. The Halloween decorations the Petersons refused to haul into their garage, skeletons erupting from the earth aside their rose garden. The placement of the sewer grates. The crater-sized pothole that I'd forget to avoid coming home from the liquor store time and time again. My house. My family's house. The time-bitten 3-story colonial I grew up in. It was there too. Why, how did you... The feeling of the executive once again curling his muscular biceps around my shoulder shut me up. Pretty neat, huh? You see, we need to know how people will use Omnigel in the wild, and when we heard tale of your legendary compliance through the grapevine, we felt confident that you'd agree to participate in this unorthodox study. He reeled me into his chest, slow and steady like a fishing line, and once I was snugly fixed to his side, he started dragging me towards my ersatz home. From there, it was simple. City Hall lent us some blueprints. We found a suitable location. Called in a few favors from Hollywood set designers. A few more favors from some local architects. But I'm sure you're not interested in the nitty-gritty. You said it yourself. You're here to get paid. My shaky feet stepped from the road to the sidewalk. Even though it was the afternoon, it was the middle of the night in the warehouse. The street lights were on. There were no stars in the sky. Or rather, there none attached to the ceiling. How far back did the road go? How many houses had they built? I couldn't tell. Every single detail was close to perfect. 0.001% off from a truly identical facsimile. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that iota of dissonance might as well have been a hot needle in my eye. The tiny grain of friction between my memories and what they had created was unbearable. The floorboards of my patio winced under pressure like they were supposed to, but the sound wasn't quite right. Frederick, we wanted you to experience the bliss of Omnigel in the comfort of your home. But at the end of the day, we're a pharmaceutical company. Science, statistics, objectivity. They're a coven of cruel, unyielding mistresses, but we're beholden to their demands nonetheless. And they demand we have control. The air that wafted out of the foyer when we walked inside correctly smelled of mold, but it was slightly too clean. Thus, we built you this very generous compromise. Your home away from home. The family photographs hung too low. The ceramic of the bowl that I'd throw my keys into after a shift at the bar was the wrong shade of brown. The floor mat was too weathered. Or maybe it wasn't weathered enough. The only difference, the only meaningful difference anyway, is the Omnigel we left for you on the dining room table. I won't bother giving you a tour. Feels redundant, don't you think? Now my instructions for you are very straightforward. Live your life as you normally would. Use the Omnigel as you see fit. We're paying you by the hour. Stay as long as you'd like. When you're done, just walk outside and a driver will take you home. I spied an unlabeled mason jar half filled with grayish oil at the center of my dining room table. I turned around. The executive loomed in the doorway. Don't know when he let go of my shoulder. He chuckled and lit a cigarette. What a peculiar thing to say. When you're done here in your home, walk outside and we'll take you home. Goosebumps butted down my torso. I felt my heart beat behind my eyes. How much will you be paying me an hour? He responded with a figure that doesn't bear repeating here, but know that the dollar amount was truly obscene. And the Omnigel, what do I do with it? Is it a skin cream or a condiment, some sort of mechanical lubricant, or... The executive took a long, blissful drag. He exhaled. As a puff of smoke billowed from his lips, he let the still-lit cigarette fall into the palm, and then he crushed the roiling ember in his hand. He grinned and gave me an answer. Yes. His cell phone began ringing. The executive spun away from me and picked up the call, strutting across the patio. Yup, correct. Turn it all on. The warehouse, my neighborhood, whirred to life with the quiet melody of suburbia. A dog barking, the wet clicking of a sprinkler, children laughing, a car grumbling over the asphalt. Not sure how long I stood there just listening. Eventually, I tiptoed forward, my eyes peeked over the door frame. The street was empty and motionless, no kids or canines or cars, and I couldn't see the executive. I was home alone in the warehouse somewhere outside the city. It took a while, but I managed to tear myself away from the door frame. I shuffled into the living room, plopped down in my recliner, and clicked on the TV. Might as well make some money, right? Honestly, I adjusted quickly. Sure, the perpetual night was strange. It made maintaining a circadian rhythm challenging. I had to avoid looking outside, too. Hearing the white noise while seeing the street vacant fractured the immersion 20 ways to Sunday. If reality ever slipped in, if I ever became unnerved, the dollar amount I was being paid per hour would flash in my head, and I'd settle. Grabbing a beer from the fridge, a self-satisfied smile grew across my face. What a dumb plan, I thought. I didn't even have to try the product. The executive told me to use Omnigel as I saw fit. Well, I don't see fit to use it at all. I'll just hang here until I've accumulated enough money to retire. No risk, all reward. As I was returning to my recliner, I caught a glimpse of the mason jar. I slowed to a stop. But I mean, what if I leave without trying it and the executive ends up being aggravated with me? They must have spent a fortune to set this all up. I could just try it once and that'd be that. I unscrewed the container's lid and popped it open, expecting to smell a puff of noxious air given the cadaverous gray-black coloration of its contents. To my surprise, there were no fumes. I put my nose to the rim and sniffed. No smell at all, actually. Cautiously, I smeared a dab the size of a Hershey's Kiss onto my pinky. It looked like something you'd dredge up from the depths of a fast food grease trap, but it didn't feel like that. It wasn't slick or slimy. Despite being a liquid, it didn't feel moist. No, it was nearly weightless and dry as a bone to the touch, similar to cotton candy. Guess I'll rub a little on the back of my hand and call it a day. Right before the substance touched my skin, a burst of high-pitched static exploded from somewhere within the house. I jumped and lost my footing on the way down, my ass hitting the floor with a painful thud. My heart pounded against the back of my throat. After a handful of crackles and feedback whines, a deep voice uttered a single word. No! One more prolonged mechanical shriek, a click, and that was it. Ambient noise dripped back into my ears. I spun my head searching for a speaker system, nothing in the dining room. I pulled my aching body upright and began pacing the perimeter of my first floor. Nothing. I stomped up the stairs. No signs of it in my bedroom or the upstairs bathroom. I yanked the drawstring to bring down the attic steps and proceeded with my search. Nothing there either, but it was alarmingly empty. None of my old furniture was where it should have been. Over the course of a few moments, confusion devolved into raw, unbridled disorientation. My first floor, my bedroom, my furniture, what the fuck was I thinking? I wasn't at home. I was in a house, on a street, within a warehouse, in the middle of nowhere. Sleep didn't come easily. The dreams that followed weren't exactly restful either. In the first one, I was sitting on a bench in an oddly shaped room with pink-tinted walls that seemed to curve towards me. I kept peering down at my watch. I was waiting for something to happen, or maybe I just couldn't leave. My stomach began gurgling. Sickness churned in my abdomen. It got worse and worse and worse, and then it happened. I was unzipped from the inside. The flesh above my abdomen neatly parted like waves of the biblical Red Sea. And a gore-stained Moses stuck his hands out, gripping the ends of my skin and wrenching me open, sternum to navel. It wasn't painful, nor did I experience fear. I observed the man burrow out of my innards and splatter at my feet with a passing curiosity. A TV show that I let hover on screen only because there wasn't something more interesting playing on the other channels. He was a strange creature, undeniably. Only 2 feet tall, naked as the day he was born, caked in viscera and convulsing on the salmon-colored floor with a pathetic intensity. Eventually, he ceased his squirming. He took a moment to catch his breath, sat up, and brushed the hair from his face. I was surprised to discover that he looked like me. Smaller, sure, but the resemblance was indisputable. He smiled at me, but he had no teeth to bare. Unadorned pink gums to match the pink walls. I smiled back to be polite. Then he pointed up, calling attention to our shared container. Were the walls a mucosa? I wondered. In other words, were we both confined within a different person's stomach? He clapped and summoned a blood-soaked cheer from his nascent vocal cords, as if responding to things I didn't say out loud. I looked back at him and scowled. The correction I offered was absurd, but it seemed to make sense at the time. No, you idiot, we're not in a stomach. Where's the acid? And the walls are much too polished to be living, I claimed. He tilted his head and furrowed his brow. Look again. The answer is simple. We're in a mason jar that someone's holding. The pink color is obviously their palm being pressed into the glass. This seemed to anger him. His eyes bulged and he dove for my throat, snarling like a starving coyote. Then I woke up in a bedroom. Days passed uneventfully. I drank beer. I watched TV. I imagined the ludicrous amount of money accumulating in my bank account. I slept. My dreams became progressively less surreal. Most of the time I just dreamt that I was home, drinking beer and watching TV. One evening, maybe about a week in, I dreamt of consuming the Omnigel, something I'd been choosing to ignore. In the dream, I drove a teaspoon into the jar and put a scoop close to my lips. When I wasn't chastised by some electric voice rumbling from the walls, I placed the oil into my mouth. I wanted to see what it tasted like, and my God, the feeling that followed its consumption was euphoric. Even though it was just a dream, I didn't need much more convincing. I woke up, sprang out of bed, marched into the dining room, picked up the jar, untwisted the lid, dug my fingers into the oil and put them knuckle deep into my mouth. Why bother with a teaspoon? No one was watching. I mean, I don't know if that's true. Someone was probably watching. What I'm saying is manners felt like overkill, and I was hungry for something other than alcohol. Just like in my dream, I wasn't scolded, but I wasn't filled with euphoria in the wake of consuming the Omnigel either. It didn't taste bad. It didn't taste good. The oil didn't really have any flavor to speak of, and I could barely sense it on my tongue. It slid down my throat like a gulp of hot air. Disappointing, I thought. No harm, no foul, though. I procured a liquid breakfast from the fridge, plodded over to the recliner, and clicked on the TV. The day chugged along without incident, same as the day before it, and I was remarkably content given the circumstances. Late that afternoon, a person's reflection paced across the screen. It was quick and the reflection was hazy, but it looked to be a woman in a crimson sundress with a silky black ponytail. Then I heard a feminine voice. "Honey, do you mind cooking tonight? Bailey's got soccer, so we won't be back till 7, she cooed. "Yeah, of course, Linda, no sweat," I replied. I felt the cold beer drip icy tears over my fingertips. A spastic muscle in my low back groaned, and I shifted my position to accommodate it. A smile very nearly crossed my lips. Then all at once my eyes widened. My head shot up like the puck on a carnival game after the lever had been hit with a mallet. I swung around and toppled out of the recliner. Both the chair and I crashed onto the floor. "Fuck," I muttered, various twinges of pain firing through my body. "Who's there?" I screamed. "Who the fuck is there?" I bellowed. My fury echoed through the house, but it received no response. Why would the company do that? Was she some actress? How'd they find someone who looks exactly like Linda? I perked my ears and waited. Nothing. Dead, oppressive silence. I couldn't even hear the artificial ambient noise that had been playing non-stop since my arrival. When did it stop? Why didn't I notice? The sound of small feet galloping against wood erupted from the ceiling above me. Childlike laughter reverberated through the halls. "All right, that's it," I growled, climbing to my feet. I rushed through the home, slammed doors into plaster, flipped over mattresses, checked each and every room for intruders, rage coursing through my veins, but they were all empty. Eventually, I found myself in front of a drawstring, about to pull down the stairs to the attic. My hand crept into view, but it stopped before reaching the tassel. I brought it closer to my face. Beads of sweat spilled over my temples. I didn't understand. My fingers were covered in omnigel. I started trembling. My whole body shook from the violent bouts of panic. My other hand went limp, and the noise of shattering glass pulled a scream from my throat. My neck creaked down until I was chin to chest. A fractured mason jar lay at my feet, shards of glass stained with ivory-colored grease. I have to check. My quaking fingertips clasped the string. The stairs descended into place. I have to check. Each step forward was its own heart attack. I could practically hear clotted arteries clicking against each other in my chest like a handful of seashells, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. I just have to check. My eyes crept over the threshold. I held my breath. Empty. No furniture, no intruders, no nothing. Beautifully vacant. I began to release a massive sigh. Before I could completely exhale, however, I realized something. Slowly, I spun in place. The attic stairs weren't built directly into the wall. There was a little space behind me, a small perch no more than 6 inches wide. My eyes landed on 2 pallid, bare feet. The skin was decorated with random patches of dark, circular discoloration, craters on the surface of the moon. But there weren't just 2. I noticed a line of moon-skinned feet in my peripheral vision. There even a few pairs behind the ones closest to me, too. They were all packed like sardines into this tiny, tiny space. Maybe I looked up. Maybe I didn't. Part of me thinks I couldn't bear to. The other part of me thinks I've forced myself to forget. It doesn't matter. I screamed, leapt down the stairs, cracked my kneecaps on the floor. The injury didn't hold me back, not one bit. I took nothing with me as I left. I raced across that faux street, irrationally nervous that I wouldn't find the door and the asphalt would just keep going on forever. But I did find the door. It was exactly where I left it. I yanked it open and threw my body out of the warehouse. Waning sunlight and a chorus of male laughter greeted me as I landed, curled up on the gravel and hyperventilating. "Don't have a conniption now, old sport," a familiar voice said amidst the cackling. I twisted my head to face them. There were 3 men, each with a cigarette dangling between their lips. 2 were dressed like chauffeurs. The third's attire was impeccable and luxurious. What day is it?" I stuttered. The heavier of the 2 chauffeurs doubled over laughing. The executive walked closer and offered me a hand up. "Well, Frederick, the day is today," he exclaimed. "For your wallet's sake, I'd hoped you would last a little longer, but 2.5 hours is still a respectable payday." "No, that's not right," I whispered. The executive's cell phone began ringing before I was entirely upright. He let go of my hand and I nearly fell back down. As I steadied myself, the smaller chauffeur reached into his pocket, retrieved my phone, clicked the side to activate the screen light, and pointed to the date. He was right. I'd only been in the warehouse for 150 minutes, give or take. I looked to the executive, my godhead in a well-pressed Italian suit, for an explanation. Something to soothe my agonizing bewilderment. He turned away from me and started talking shop with whoever was on the other line. Already I'd been forgotten. Did you get everything? All the vertigraphs? Uh-huh. Oh, wow, you're sure? 37? That's exceptionally high yield. Yes, agreed, he's one. Hungry boy, apparently. He looked over his shoulder, flashed me a grin, and winked. Slowly, painfully, I felt my lips oblige. I smiled back at him. Linda was thrilled to see the wad of cash I brought home. According to the orthodontist, Bailey will need braces sooner rather than later. I haven't told her about what I experienced. No, I simply told her they awarded me a bonus for my work ethic at the bar. It's been a few days since the warehouse. Overall, my life hasn't changed much, with one exception. I startled my wife the first time I entered the house through the back door, but I don't plan on entering through the front for a long while. Sorry about that, honey. I really fucked up my knees the other day. Hurts to climb the patio steps. Which, technically speaking, isn't a lie, but it's not the real reason I avoid the patio. I avoid the patio because I'm afraid of what I might discover. What if I step over the floorboards and they wince like they're supposed to, but it isn't exactly right? I wouldn't be able to cope with the ambiguity. I don't think I'm still in the warehouse. But I think it's just safer not to know for sure. Story 1 ends here. Now, let's begin story 2. My uncle left me a tropical paradise with some important rules to follow. Alright, anyone have something like this happen to them? So the other night I get back to my apartment after another lousy shift, and there's a freaking letter addressed to me on my bed. Not in the stack of bills piled up under the mail slot, on my mattress. Looked like it came out of a fantasy story, fancy wax seal on the envelope and everything. I asked the landlady if the security cameras covering my hallway recorded anyone breaking in. But it just caught that punk from 4F making out with his latest girlfriend. All my windows were still locked from the inside when I checked. Creeped me the hell out. I didn't open the letter for a few days. Figured if someone was playing a prank on me, they'd out themselves if I didn't bring it up for a while. But I got curious, and a few hours ago I popped the seal and read it. Here's what it said. Dearest nephew, if you are reading this, it means my long life has finally drawn to a close, and I must pass along the family estate to my most eligible next of kin, which is you. Being a single man in his youth with few social obligations, you are the prime candidate to undergo this venture. Just imagine it. Your own private island with a lavish mansion, breathtaking scenery, full amenities, even Wi-Fi, and never having to work another day in your life. And all you have to do to leave the dreary world of the 9-to-5 wages slave is pack your bags. But I think I'm getting ahead of things. Allow me to introduce myself. You have never met me, but I am your father's great Uncle Stanley, your grandmother Constance's cousin. Given my less than respectable lifestyle in my youth and my disappearance 60 years ago, it would be no surprise if the memory of me had been conveniently swept under the rug. I gather my life before undertaking this lifelong vacation bears similarity to yours. I kept to myself with little social interaction, had disinterest in work and studies, and had nothing to occupy my time but my vices. And much like yourself and those before me, I was in my early 20s when I got a letter from a forgotten relative with the deal of a lifetime. Since then, my entire life has been spent in luxury and peaceful isolation. I kept up to date with the outside world through newspapers, television, and the internet. Supplies arrive regularly at the dock, and I have never found myself wanting. I enjoyed many hobbies such as fishing, swimming, gardening, island chores, and even did a spot of writing. Now, as I feel my age catching up to me, I must pass along this paradise and prepare its new tenant, or should I say caretaker, for what awaits you should you choose to take up this offer. For while your life here will be luxurious, nothing is free, and there are a few simple responsibilities you must keep tabs on. That and living in isolation means you must be aware of any and all hazards so as not to find yourself caught with the proverbial thumb up your keister. Don't worry, our family has been enjoying this island for generations, and through over 3 centuries of trial and error, we have this place figured out to a T. The mansion's library will have all you could want to know about this place's history and rules of upkeep, and I will write several more cheat sheets to help you with the more nuanced tasks. But for the sake of brevity, this letter'll just get you up to speed on the process of getting you settled on your arrival. Should you accept the responsibility, a car will pick you up at first light the day after you open and read this letter. You'll know it when you see it. Don't ask how it knows to come, just be ready at the curb with your belongings. Don't leave anything behind you want to lose, as you won't be coming back. From there you will be driven to port, where your driver will point out the ship waiting to take you to your new home. The crew will load your belongings. Under no circumstances are you to offer to help them, but do be sure to thank them for their services. Their persnickety about these things, and besides, you're about to begin a new life of leisure. No point in throwing all that away by becoming the newest member of the crew. Once on board, the trip will take 4 days. Do not worry if you have a tendency towards seasickness. The helmsman is sure and the ride is smooth no matter the weather. However, while you are allowed full access to the ship during the day, it is imperative that at night you stay on the top deck. Under no circumstances should you venture below deck at night, regardless of threats of impending storms, as the crew is restless and the moonlight's protection won't reach below. Instead, spend your nights at the forward top deck near the ship's figurehead and sleep during the day in the shade. Also, while the cook is a surly individual, he has a jovial nature at heart and his cooking is immaculate. But whatever you do, don't ask for seconds and politely decline the gumbo. Long pig may sound delicious, but believe me when I say it is one culinary venture you don't want to take. When you arrive at the island, the crew will unload your belongings into a golf cart with a storage trunk parked near the dock for your convenience. It is now safe to assist them if you so desire. Be sure to thank them again for their services and wish them well. Shake the captain's hand, but do not do so with the helmsman. Stay at the dock and watch until they sail out of sight. If you happen to see the ship capsize, check the mooring post on your right. If the time matches what was carved into the wood, then there is nothing to worry about. If it doesn't, note the time for later, then begin making your way along the path to the mansion up the hill. You should reach the house well before sundown. Try not to get distracted with the scenery. There'll be time enough for that later. The front door should be unlocked, but when you first arrive, pass it up and instead park the cart to the right of the mansion by the greenhouse. You can leave your belongings there. They will be moved to your quarters that night after you familiarize yourself with the house a bit. The door closest to the greenhouse opens into the kitchen. If the ship that brought you here went under at a time other than what was carved on the mooring post, write it down on the clipboard hanging next to the sink. Feel free to grab a light snack from the fridge if you're feeling peckish, but be sure to save room for dinner. Then walk through the green door which opens into the dining hall. The tables will be set and all but one of the chairs will be pushed in. Leave this chair out and the half-eaten food in front of it untouched. It is the custodian's seat, and he will return to his meal after he brings in your belongings later in the night. From the dining hall, you will walk into the main foyer. Take your time to appreciate the marble staircase and see if you can make out the faint impressions left by feet from 3 centuries of our family treading up and down them. Make your way up to the 3rd floor landing and take a right. The opulent door at the end of the hall is the master bedroom, but do not enter, as the custodian sleeps there between tenants and values his privacy. Instead, politely knock 3 times and announce that you are the new occupant and will be requiring him to return to his assigned quarters by the morning. Then return downstairs to the dining hall, where your own dinner will be waiting for you at the main table. After dinner, be sure to stack your plates and utensils neatly. You want to make a good impression with the custodian. Then return to the foyer and go through the large green double doors at the other side of the mansion. This is the library where you will spend the night while the custodian readies your room and gets you settled in. The armchair by the fireplace is quite comfortable, and in my recent years I find myself comfortably sleeping here more than the master bedroom. While there is an extensive collection of books, I guess that you'll be more interested in the small paper taped to the underside of the coffee table with the Wi-Fi password. However, I would advise you read the letter I will leave in the large green book on the writing desk. It will entail how to proceed with your first day as the island's caretaker, as getting a feel for these things ahead of time helps. By 9:45 p.m., close and lock all locks on the double doors, and check to ensure the window locks are in place and not loose. A small screwdriver is in the left drawer of the writing desk if they need to be tightened. Then get comfortable and spend the rest of the night here. Ignore any noises coming from the hallway. The custodian will be using the front door throughout the night, so expect to hear it opening several times. If you need to use the bathroom, there is one on the other side of the blue door to the right of the fireplace. There is a small case with reusable earplugs on the mantelpiece. I would advise you use them this first night, as the local wildlife tends to get vocal after 10 p.m. And while most are harmless, their calls can be unsettling for those unaccustomed to them. On that same note, if you hear your name in the night, do not respond or react in any way. Just don't. Trust me, it's not worth it. And that should cover your first night on the island. You will be awoken in the morning with 3 knocks on the double doors. This is the custodian letting you know he has finished transferring your belongings to the master bedroom. He will not enter the mansion again except for the scheduled cleaning days. From there, refer to my aforementioned letter in the Green Book for everything you'll need to know about officially becoming caretaker of the island and all it entails. I do hope you'll take this chance of a lifetime, but the choice is of course yours. Regardless of your decision, I hope this letter found you well and that you will continue to have a pleasant life. Sincerely, great Uncle Stanley. I still had the login for the family tree service my grandmother got for us before her passing, and sure enough, I did have a great Uncle Stanley. Although there was next to nothing about him other than his name. While it could be and probably is a scam, I gotta admit it's not like I've got a lot to lose. My job sucks ass and I've had to sell most of my belongings just to cover the rent in this glorified storage unit of an apartment. I haven't been close with most of my family in years, not since I was falsely accused of SA in high school because the popular girl was bored. Same incident lost me the few friends I had, so my social circle is non-existent too. I only have a small backpack, but it can fit what few clothes and possessions I have easily enough. Honestly, I'm at the point where I'll try anything over this dead-end life I'm living now. I've got my stuff out on my mattress ready to be packed and let my boss know I won't be in for a few days. I'm going to wait outside tomorrow for the car to pick me up. If you don't hear from me in a week, they probably took my kidneys or something. I'll post again when and if I can. Wish me luck. Story 2 ends here now. We drift into story 3. I discovered a bazaar where blood and bone were the only currency. It wouldn't let me leave until I bought something. I have a skull in the corner of my office. It sits on a shelf a little above my eye line. It watches me and fills me with great dread. I acquired it at an open-air bazaar in China. If you wish for a street or a city or some more definite form of location, I'm afraid I cannot give it to you. Already the memories fuzz around the edges in my head as I try to recall them. But at their center is a clear image I must never forget. So I write this to keep the molder from overtaking the whole. When I was in my 20s, I was fascinated with the world and its variety. Bored with school and its routine, I decided to forego my studies and take a more hands-on approach to life. I took the money I had saved for college and started a hitchhiking journey across the globe. I went everywhere: France, Spain, Italy, the Philippines. I even backpacked across India so I could better understand its people and cultures. But the crowning jewel of my travels was China. The Middle Kingdom, as it is sometimes called, fascinated me unlike any other place. Its culture and its history enthralled me. I wanted to know everything about it. It took years to get a tourist visa. But once I was there, I never wanted to leave. I was there for 2 years. In that time, I learned the language, traveled the countryside, and sought to learn everything I could. It was my dream to live there forever. Or if that was impossible, at least die there. But then came the day I wandered into the other market. In a city I cannot now remember, there was a place where the locals gathered together to sell fresh produce and the most delicious street food. An open-air bazaar of sorts. The place was so friendly, so inviting, that I halted my trip entirely so I could stay longer in that beautiful place. While I was there, I chatted with the shopkeepers about their lives and their histories. With their words, they painted a rich tapestry of their culture, and soon I found myself calling many of them friends. They gave me tips on places to visit, good food to try, and on which market stalls sold the best products. I felt safe. I felt home. Then an incident occurred. It was a normal day. I had just purchased some ripe fruit from a familiar stall when I noticed something I had passed over many times before. It was a small side alley in the market, dark and thin, lying between 2 buildings. At a glance, I could see booths on the other side of the passage. I assumed it was another part of the market. Curious, I went closer to get a better look. I crossed the street and approached the opening. As I took my first steps into the gap, a stranger grabbed my arm and forcefully pulled me out. I was frightened. I turned to face my attacker. It was an old man, jowls hanging down to match the length of his abnormally large ears. His face was pockmarked with the remnants of forgotten diseases he had conquered, and his eyebrows grew so thick they hung low across his eyes like fringe. His back was stooped and crooked, yet he walked with no cane. Judging by the hand on my arm, he was stronger than he looked. I expected an altercation, but instead of anger in the stranger's eyes, I saw pure, unadulterated fear. He glanced at the alley, and it was as if he were looking directly into the gaping maw of a bloodlusted shark. His words were scattered and hard to understand, but the stranger managed to communicate that the area was off limits. He kept side-eyeing the alley, edging away from it. Looking around, I noticed that most of the vendors were also giving it a wide berth. No one had set up shop in a 50-foot diameter area around the dark gap. Passers-by crossed the street when they came near it, holding their heads down and shuffling forward at a faster pace. "Do not go." Those were the stranger's parting words. He shuffled away, looking nervously behind him as if the alley were going to pursue him. I took him at his word, at first. But even with the new fear I felt toward this strange passage, another feeling grew. Curiosity. Each time I returned, my fascination grew. It was like a fungus on my brain. At first, it was just double glances as I walked past. Then I began to think about the alley even when I was not there. Once the fear of it had subsided, I often stood across the street from it and tried to peer through to the other side. What was over there? I tried to ask my new friends about the alley. Each time I did, it felt like the air itself froze in place. Without hesitation, they each told me the same thing: do not go through it. One person, How Young, I pressed a little harder for information. He sold fresh fruit, his specialty being peaches. I had gotten especially close to him over my stay there. "Why?" I asked. "Why should I not go over there? Isn't it part of the market?" How Young tried his best to explain, but to me his words still felt cryptic. He told me the alley was the only way to get into that section of the city, a place he called the other market. He was right about that. In my own investigations, I had tried several times to find other openings, other paths into that section of stalls, but came up with nothing. The alley was the only one. How Young went on to further explain that while there were people that did go inside on occasion, each time they did, they came back different. "There's nothing good over there," he said. "It's not worth it." Despite his warnings, my fascination grew. I was drawn to that alley, staring at it for hours and hours. My curiosity started feeling more like hunger. Many days I would strain my neck trying to see what was happening on the other side. I just needed a glimpse, I told myself, and then I would be satisfied. One day I got my glimpse. I was yet again staring at that damned alleyway. The impulse to explore overtook me like a fever. It crept down my body and made me tremble with the desire. Emboldened by the feeling, I checked my surroundings for a moment. It was a busy day at the market. Everyone was preoccupied. No one was watching. Now was my chance. I made my way across the street and slid my way into the gap. It was colder than I expected in the alley. It had been a warm day, but I felt a chill as if I were passing through the deep shadow of a glacier. In the darkness, the sound of the world behind me became muffled. The street market hubbub faded to a dull murmur, then a whisper, then silence. When I had pushed through fully, it was as if the street outside no longer existed. I was in the other market. A tented booth was in the way when I got out of the alley. I moved my way around and got onto the street. My first observation, it was almost a mirror copy of the other bazaar. The same placement of booths, the same distance between vendors, even the same colors on the tents. But it wasn't entirely the same. There was something off. It was deserted of shoppers. I was the only customer there. Shopkeepers manned each booth, but they were the only other human beings in the whole place. Each stall sold a dizzying variety of goods, but it wasn't produce. Their shelves and stands were full of other strange items. Knives, dolls, symbols written on ragged material I couldn't identify. Across the surface of the nearest table were bones and devices with purposes I could not begin to understand. I was so taken by the goods that it took me a moment to notice the shopkeepers. All of them were smiling widely and focused directly on me. It was like each individual shop owner was standing ready for my business and my business alone. I reasoned that since I was the only shopper on the street, that made sense. But the more they looked at me, the more uneasy I became. Their smiles were empty, the kind you give for an extra % of gratuity. The kindness was transactional, and they were waiting for my side of the exchange. My curiosity had been sated. The feelings of danger were returning. I wanted to leave. Now it took a moment for me to find the tent I had emerged behind. I went behind it looking for the alley entrance so I could return to my home turf, filled with safety, friends, and food. When I looked where the alley had been, it took a moment to process what I was seeing. My heart sank into my stomach. It was gone. Where there had been a gap in the buildings, there was now a solid wall. It was like the buildings themselves had drawn together, closing the gap. You couldn't have stuck a knife in it, the crack was so tight. I looked up and down, hoping I had just misremembered the alley's placement. I hadn't. In my ever-frantic searching, I could find no openings of any kind. After combing over the block twice, the sun was getting low in the sky. I was desperate. I pushed through my discomfort and went to a booth owner. I asked how to get out of this market section. "Buy something," the woman said, her teeth glinting in the red glow of the sunset. Not sure how this was supposed to help me, I looked at the table and tried to find the cheapest looking item. I picked up a small die with strange symbols painted on it in midnight black ink. I asked about its price. 1 leg. I was sure I hadn't heard her right. I asked again and she responded the same. 1 leg. In the corner of the tent I saw a dadao, a sort of Chinese machete. A horrifying realization dawned on me. The concept seemed so absurd, so unreal, but the owner confirmed my suspicions when she grasped the blade's handle and turned back to face me. "Would you like to pay now?" I quickly set down the die and backed away. The owner made no move to follow me. They just kept smiling and informed me they had many other goods to choose from, and they were open to negotiating price. I went to several other booths and asked for directions on how I could leave. All said the same thing. Buy something. Each time I tried to select an item, the brutal prices were given with the same nonchalant attitude as the first. An eye, a hand, my genitals. They said this casually as if they were simply speaking of different cash denominations. The sun had fallen by this point and the sky was dark. It hung over me, a black expanse like a smothering blanket. There were no stars to tell direction. There was no moon. The only illumination came from the glare of the torches lighting up the wares and the twinkle of candles coming from the windows. The silence of the night was deafening. At any crowded street market there is always a dull murmur of noise, an underlying layer that a patron may stand on to know that they are not alone. There is always some transaction, some exchange being made, and quiet is never allowed to linger long. That rule did not apply here. Soundlessness reigned. I could not even hear the breaths of the individual shopkeepers. I don't know if they even did breathe. They stared ahead at me, waiting. My purchase, it seemed, was the only thing that mattered. I started to panic. I began to try every method of escape. I ran up the length of the street, but just when I thought I had made a good distance from my starting point, I would find myself back where I had begun. I tried all the doors to the building, but they were locked. I went crazy with fear and tried to bash the wooden slats in with the heel of my foot. When I was finished, they still stood resolute and unmarked. No longer caring for safety or propriety, I began to scale the sides of the buildings. My fingers scrabbled to find any foothold or handhold that would move me upwards. My fingers caught in the crevices, and at one point my fingernail was pulled out of my flesh by a jutting nail. I continued on, ignoring my bleeding finger. I had to get out. I needed to get out. Nothing else mattered. I managed to get to the roof. I stood atop it and saw the market on the other side. My market. My heart soared. My friends, my regular haunts, they were waiting down there and beckoning to me like sirens, and I, a sailor with a death wish. I quickly made my way down to the other side. When I dislodged from the wall and turned to face my freedom, my blood went cold. Instead of my friends, I saw those same strange booths, those strange, perverse shopkeepers smiling and waving, all waiting for me to buy. I was back. I had never really left. It was weeks before I broke down and bought something. Time became strange in the quiet. It passed like a fevered dream. I lived off the fetid pools in the gutter and caught rats that had the misfortune of being trapped in there with me. I ate their flesh raw. Unable to purchase the fire starters sold 2 booths over from my makeshift hovel. It would have cost me my tongue to purchase after all. I couldn't part with that. At some point the rats ran out and the water dried up. I began to starve. I could see the bones in my forearms, and the constant gnawing of hunger began to drive me insane. I counted my ribs to pass the time. It was in my lowest that I had a sudden moment of clarity. It was the middle of the day, and the sun was beating me about the head with its heat. I had resorted to drinking my own urine, which had taken on a dark brown cast. It smelled foul. My mind was fractured, but one coherent thought shot through me, unifying the pieces for a moment. It was as if someone had spoken directly into my ear. I was going to die unless I bought something. The bargaining began. I went up the length of the street, shuffling on malnourished legs. It was painful, but it was possible. I greeted shopkeepers and began to haggle. I tried my earlier strategy of choosing cheap-looking items, but found that looks were deceiving. These often were the most expensive. One small handkerchief would have cost me all 4 of my limbs. I tallied up the cost of all the items, trying to determine what I was willing to lose so I could leave this place. The shop owners would not be talked down. If they wanted an arm, they might settle for a forearm, but never a hand. If they wanted a leg, a foot would never do. 5 fingers might become 4, but never 1. That was when I found a miracle. I found the skull. It looked like it could have belonged to some undiscovered species of monkey. That, or it was a human skull deformed beyond all comprehension. I had felt its gaze on me as I began my journey from booth to booth, trying to barter for my escape from this hell. Its presence had unnerved me so much that I had passed it over on my first journey up and down the street. On my second go-through, I reluctantly asked its price. 1 finger. The shopkeeper pointed upwards with his index finger. Ironically, I felt excitement. I had found it, the cheapest item. Its price was still steep. Had it been at the beginning of my stay at the other market, I would have balked at paying. But with starvation comes context, and a finger began to feel like a bargain. I almost agreed to the trade on the spot, but I made the mistake of looking at the skull again. Its empty sockets felt like 2 holes of unfathomable depth. As I looked, I imagined myself falling into them until my body and soul were dissolved in the perpetual night. I hated it. Even in my weakened state, I wanted nothing to do with that skull. But my third journey up and down the street made me so dizzy I had to sit down. I was running out of time. I went to the booth and agreed to the skull's price. I held my hand on the table and closed my eyes. I braced for the impact of the Dadao. When nothing came, I opened them again. The shopkeeper had their hand extended, the handle of the blade facing towards me. The message was clear. I took the Dadao and went about planning the best way to remove my finger. I considered a single chop, but I wanted to limit the damage done to the rest of my hand. I couldn't get the right angle from that vantage. Besides, I needed to do the chopping with my offhand. When I had gone to take the index finger from my left, the shopkeeper had shaken their head. Other hand, the right one. It took an hour, but I eventually settled on a course of action. I took a deep breath and pulled my index finger back in a sharp jerk. The pain reached me before the snap. I bit into my tongue, tasting fresh blood as I made sure there was a break in the bone by jerking my finger back and forth. The burning in my hand was white hot, and I felt the broken ends of bone grating against each other. I screamed into my closed mouth, trying to muffle the sound. Hoping that my adrenaline would keep me going, I took the Dadao and began sawing. Blood soaked out through the break in my skin and smothered the length of the blade. The weapon was sharp, but not razor. I pushed and pulled to help the blade sever the skin, muscle, and tissue, the last things keeping my finger on my hand and me in this wretched place. At one point, the blade caught on a tendon and I felt it rip from its supports in my hand, pulling out in a white string that dangled and jumped. I swallowed down bile and kept going. I had to finish. One final pull, and the finger pulled off from my hand in a spurt of blood. I threw it down on the counter and shoved my hand into my armpit. I needed to get out of here, and then maybe I could find a doctor who could stop the bleeding. The shopkeeper took their time, examining the finger, going over it again and again. At one point, they took out a jeweler's glass and examined the severed end. I saw spots and I dry heaved. After 2 long minutes, the shopkeeper nodded. My offering was satisfactory. He extended the skull to me. "I don't want it," I told him. He just shook his head at me. "You buy it, you take it." I didn't have time to argue. I was an inch away from passing out from pain and blood loss. I took the skull in my good hand and shambled away. Somehow I knew where to go. I made my way up the street. I found the tent where I had emerged from the alley. That all felt like an eon ago. I held my breath, praying the shopkeepers had not lied to me. My heart leapt. There was the alley, open. I could see the markets on the other side. I went as fast as I could to it, afraid I would blink and the alley would close. I threw my body into the slit and pushed forward with force. I kept waiting for some sort of resistance, some force to keep me in the other market. It never came. In a burst of speed, I left the alley. I was bombarded with a blast of people shouting, haggling, and complaining about subpar product. I was back. It might have been the joy at escaping, or it might have been that my ears had grown accustomed to the silence of the other market. Regardless, in my starved and broken state, it was all too much. My eyes rolled back into my head and I collapsed in the mud. I awoke 2 days later in a small hospital. Hao Yang was sitting next to me. Apparently, despite my weeks inside the other market, no time had passed in the outside world. Hao Yang remembered seeing me eyeing the alley, and the next moment saw me emerging with my bloodied hand, looking half crazed and starved out of my mind. He knew what had happened immediately. He was the one who brought me to the hospital. On my bedside table was the skull. Hao Yang refused to touch it. He sat himself on the other side of the bed and tried his best never to look at it. He refused to speak of the skull or the bazaar when I began asking questions. Once he was sure I was recovering, he stopped showing up at the hospital. I think we frightened him, the skull and I. After being discharged, things changed. People avoided me, crossing the road at my approach. People that were normally friendly became nervous in my presence. The market, once a friendly place, now felt cold. No one talked to me unless I first addressed them. No one even looked at me if they could help it. Ironically, the only welcoming part of the market was the alley. It was always there, waiting, almost beckoning me to step through again. In those moments, I tried to remember what the other market had put me through, but it didn't stop the curiosity from digging into my mind like a bad itch. 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, I decided to go back to America. I had acquired no souvenirs on my world exploring trip. I didn't have room for them. But the skull followed me home. I tried to leave it in 3 separate hotel rooms. Each time it would appear again in my bag, nestled comfortably in my clothes and watching me from the depths of my suitcase. On the boat home, I tossed it into the ocean. That night when I came to my bunk, it was on my bedspread. A few drops of salt water graced its cranium like a perverted aspersion. It stared up at me with those empty sockets, and I could feel something inside me withering. I stopped trying to get rid of it. It was better to just ignore it. Ignore the decay, ignore the rot. Just let it stay and fester, and hope that one day time will take it from you. When I returned, it found a new home on my office shelf. It must like it there because it doesn't move around as much. It's been years since then. Years that I purchased with my finger at the other market. But even still, I am not free. My time is running out. I finally discovered the true price of the skull, the fine print I passed over in my haste to pay the low price. The doctors are calling it early onset Alzheimer's. I know better. Memories run together now in my head like wet paint splashed over my cortex. I no longer remember Spain, France, the Philippines. Even now I strain under the gaze of the skull to remember Hao Yang's face, the taste of fresh peaches at his market stall. The skull has left me only with my time at the other market untouched. But I know it will take that too in time. It will take all of me. Maybe if I hadn't been so stingy, maybe if my survival had been worth an arm or a leg. Maybe then I wouldn't be paying the dividends, but it's too late now. A final bit of advice from a man senile by his own hand. Don't be cheap. It will cost you. Story 3 ends here. Now listen closely to story 4. A perfect woman. I'll just take these boxes downstairs to the garage. I tell my boyfriend Chase, putting another holiday serving platter in the cardboard box. I'll take it for you, sweetheart. I know how heavy all 100 of your Christmas platters are, he says, smiling mischievously and kissing me on the cheek. Hey, I laugh, swatting his arm. I want to be prepared if we ever have one of those Christmas parties like the movies where dozens of people come, and I save Christmas somehow. He laughs and picks up the box. You're right. I need to be manifesting that for you. He winks and disappears down the stairs, shutting the door behind him. My spring cleaning has run amok in the house, but I think I've got the last of it sorted. Our house isn't huge. We have a 2-story house with 4 bedrooms. Beautiful exterior. I just wish it had more storage. I smooth the bedspread on the now cleaned guest bedroom and smile at the room before closing the door behind me. Chase is coming in from the garage when I come downstairs. Boxes all put away? I ask. Yes, but we officially can never buy anything else ever again. He laughs, opening the fridge to grab a beer. Well, when we get our next house, I need more storage. The attic is too small and I want a basement. We can turn it into your man cave too. I smile, wiggling my eyebrows. He smiles at me, a lazy smile. After 5 years together, he still gives me butterflies. Anything you want, sweetheart. And that goes for dinner too. What are you thinking? He leans back on the counter, opening a food delivery app on his phone. Chinese. I would love to learn how to make Mongolian beef at home to save money, but unfortunately you do not love me for my cooking skills, I tell him, looking into the fridge with a sigh. Ah, yes, how could I forget when you so infamously almost burned down this very kitchen the first time you came over, after you insisted you could cook us a whole meal. He sneaks up behind me and wraps his arms around me, making me squeal. See? I can't possibly be your dream woman. I can't even cook, I whine between giggles. He smooths my hair. I have everything I need, he says earnestly. More butterflies. Once our takeout comes, we are eating in front of the TV when I hear a tapping sound. Do you hear that? I ask. Chase responds, not looking up from his takeout container. It's a tapping sound. Is it coming from the dining room? I put my food down and get up to walk that way. Babe, I don't hear anything. Could be a pipe. This house was old when I got it, and it's even older now. He calls from the living room. When I reach the dining room, I still hear it. I'm starting to pull out furniture to inspect when I hear a hard thump. Then the tapping stops. I rush back into the room and Chase is picking up his beer bottle off the floor. Foamy, brown liquid is now staining the rug. God, I'm so sorry. I reached for my beer and I knocked it off the table. Could you grab me a towel? He asks, moving his food to the coffee table. Of course. I'll be right back. I grab him a towel and we clean it together. Comes right up. Did you figure out the tapping? He asked me, picking up our trash. Oh, no I didn't. Must have been a pipe, I respond, looking back towards the dining room. He nods. If you want, I can call the plumber to come out and check everything. Just to make sure it's not something important, he says, heading towards the kitchen. Oh no, I'm sure it's fine. I'll let you know if I hear it again. I smile. Later that night, after we had gone to bed, I wake up with a startle. I'm gasping, covered in sweat, and shakily looking for the switch to the lamp at my bedside table. Chase? Chase? I whisper. The lamp flares to light. Chase isn't next to me. Chase? I say a little louder. Silence. I get up and walk to the bathroom. Sometimes when he can't sleep, he will take a shower. The bathroom is empty, but I take time to splash my face with water. He must have wanted a midnight snack. He's probably downstairs. Chase? I call out at normal volume. I'm just passing my doorway, heading towards the stairs, when I see Chase. He's halfway up. He looks relieved to see me. Sweetie, hey, are you okay? He asks quickly, taking my hands and looking at my face. Oh yes, I just had a nightmare. I think I can't even remember what it was about. I trail off, looking at him. He looks red and like he broke a sweat running to the stairs. Are you all right? I ask. Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, I went downstairs to watch TV and I must have dozed off. You calling my name woke me up and I thought you were hurt, so I ran upstairs to check on you. My adrenaline is through the roof right now. He laughs, but it doesn't meet his eyes. Oh, honey, I coo. You're my white knight, always trying to save me. What do you say? We make use of that adrenaline. I playfully tease my finger on his shoulder. He smiles and shakes his head. Oh, I would love to, but I'm all frazzled right now. How about I take a shower and we snuggle instead? He asks, wrapping me into a hug. Of course, that's probably the right idea, I respond. Once he's done in the shower, we do exactly that. The next evening, Chase has his monthly work dinner. He's an anesthesiologist, so the money is great, but his coworker, not so much. You sure you'll be all right? He asks, checking his tie in our hallway mirror. Yes, I'll be fine, I respond. We do this little routine every month. I'll catch up on all my obnoxious reality TV you hate. Ah, I don't know about that. TV is broken, he responds, still focusing on the mirror. Since when? I ask. Dinner yesterday. Some of the beer splashed on the box. I'll get a new one this weekend, don't worry, he says, smiling, turning towards me. But you were watching it last night, I thought. That's why you came downstairs, I say, and it comes out sharper than I intend. His expression doesn't change. Oh, well, yeah, I tried to come down to watch it. That's when I noticed it was broken, so I fell asleep. Sorry, I thought I mentioned that, he explains with that easy smile. No worries, I'll just read. Go knock them dead tonight, you always do, I say, giving him a good luck kiss. I wave at his car leaving the driveway, and I turn and go back to the living room. I pick up my current book club read and open up the next chapter. I start to hear it again. Tapping. Jesus, really? I say, putting my bookmark back in and heading to the dining room. It's softer tapping this time, but still steady. Tap, dot, tap, dot, tap, dot. I take out my phone and send a message to Chase. Tapping is back. We should call plumber tomorrow. I put my phone in my pocket and look around. I pull up rugs looking for any pipe leaking. Tap, dot, tap, dot, tap, dot. This is so weird, I mumble. I look at the china hutch. It's been there since I moved in. It's ugly as sin, but Chase says it's a pain to move. It belonged to his grandmother, I think. If any pipe is broken, it's behind that old thing. I push my shoulder into it and start to scoot it. To my shock, it moves pretty easily. I move it a few inches when my phone starts to ring. It's Chase's ringtone. I hit the green answer button. Hey, sorry, I know you're driving, I start. Hey, he says, so the tapping is back? Same room? Yeah, I've been moving stuff around to see if there's any water leakage, but I don't see anything. I trail off, looking at the floor next to the massive hutch I just moved. Oh, sweetie, you don't need to move anything around. You'll hurt yourself. Just go relax in a bath. I'll check it out tomorrow, he tells me. He sounds off. I can't tell why. Yeah, maybe you're right. I just tried to move your grandma's hutch and it is pretty heavy. I laugh softly into the phone. He's quiet for a moment. Then he bursts out in an exaggerated laugh. Yeah, it's really heavy, such a pain. I'll get the plumber to help tomorrow. Just don't touch anything else tonight. Just relax, he says frantically. Okay, I won't, I reply cautiously. Ugh, I'm sorry, I'm just worried about you hurting yourself. I'll deal with all that stuff tomorrow. Just go and try to relax. Okay, I tell him. I will. Promise? He asks, and I can hear his blinker turn on. Yes, I promise, I respond, still looking at the hutch. Okay, I love you. I'll call you when I'm on the way home, he tells me, and I can hear him putting the car in park. He must be at the restaurant. Love you, bye, I tell him before hanging up and sliding my phone back into my pocket. Why didn't he want me moving things? I'm not picking things up, really. I'm just scooting. He seemed to get really stressed about me moving the hutch. The tapping starts again. Tap dot, tap dot, tap dot. I don't think it's a pipe. Maybe an animal got in the wall? I put my ear up to the sliver of wall I cleared from moving the hutch and listen. The tapping is coming from this wall. Against Chase's wishes, I put my side against the hutch and move it the rest of the way. It moves easily. Too easily. I lean down and notice tiny furniture slides have been placed underneath it already. That's odd, I've never seen this thing moved before. When I stand back up, the wall seems blank, the wood paneling uniform. I start knocking on the wall, trying to figure out if some critter is hiding. Once I move over the panel directly in front of me, the sound changes. The wall seems different here. I run my fingers along the panel and lightly push. The wall moves. I jump back and gasp. It's a door. It slowly opens and reveals a staircase. The tapping continues and it's louder. I'm shaking by this point. How did I not know there was a basement? All our neighbors had one and I was so confused why we didn't. I take out my phone flashlight and head towards the stairs, slowly. The tapping grows louder as I descend the dark stairs. The light is shaking from my hands. When I reach the bottom step, I flash the light around. It looks like a seemingly normal basement, just some old boxes. The tapping is coming from my right. I shine my light over there and I see a door, with a key next to it hanging on the wall. I put my ear up to the door and I hear the tapping mixed with soft music. What the hell? I whisper. I try the door, but it's locked, so I try the key hanging next to it. It opens, slowly. Warm light fills the basement as the door opens and the music grows louder. I look around the room and it is not what I expected. It looks like an apartment. There's a couch, a TV, a hallway leading to more rooms. I follow the tapping to the kitchen. There's a woman standing there at the counter. Her back is to me, but I can tell what she's doing. She's chopping vegetables. Tap, dot, tap, dot, tap, dot. The knife rocking back and forth against a wooden cutting board. She chops something green and then slides it into a bowl. Darling, you're early. Dinner is almost ready, she sings, turning over her shoulder. She gasps when she sees me. She steps back, holding a knife. Who are you? She demands. Who am I? You're in my basement, I yell. She studies me. This is my home, and I will kindly ask you to leave. It isn't time yet, she says calmly, still holding the knife. I'm in shock. She has an apron, her hair and makeup are done, and she's wearing heels. I don't know what. I'm stammering. I can feel myself getting nauseous, and I'm trying to breathe. Something over my shoulder catches her attention, and she sighs in relief. Darling, I'm so glad you're home. Is this her? She seems confused, she says, putting the knife down. I slowly turn over my shoulder, and standing in the doorway is Chase. His face is a picture. It's a mixture of horror and shock. "Darling," I whisper. "Baby, I can explain." He takes a step towards me. "Daddy!" A little voice squeals from the hallway to my right. A small boy runs up to Chase with his arms in the air. Chase picks him up, but his eyes haven't left me the whole time. The woman walks over to Chase and kisses him on the cheek. She is just dreadful, walking into my home and yelling at me. I thought she would be nicer. She shakes her head at me in disapproval. "You thought..." "What?" I shriek. "I can explain. Please just try to listen," Chase says, putting the child down and walking to me. "Come on, Liam, I'll give you your bath," the woman says, pushing past us into the hallway with the boy. "I'm going to be sick," I say out loud. Chase reaches for me. "Don't touch me," I scream. He freezes. "How long?" I demand. "How long has she been down here?" He smiles sadly, and I have my answer. "You're disgusting," I seethe, "and we are done." I push past him and head for the stairs. Baby, please, just listen. This could work. Her name is Julia, and she is almost perfect. She can't make me laugh like you can. We don't get along as well, but she cooks and she cleans all the stuff you hate. So together you're a perfect woman. Am I wrong for wanting my two girls under one roof? He asks, crossing into the dining room with me. So you locked her down there? I yell. No. Well, yes, just until you were okay with the arrangement. And then we could all live together, he pleads. We've been together 5 years. You're sick, I whisper. Baby, just hear me out. This could work. You could be best friends, sisters even. He follows me up the stairs into our shared bedroom. We will not be sisters. I am getting my things and leaving now. And you can have Julia and your son, I scream, throwing things in my suitcase. You're not even giving it a chance. I thought you were different, he whispers. Yeah, well, I thought you didn't want kids, so we are both surprised right now, I say, slamming the suitcase and heading to the stairs. I already have Liam. I don't need another. He wasn't planned, he tells me, following me. I really don't care anymore. You are sick and disgusting, and I am leaving, I say, turning to face the door. From behind me, his voice changes. I'm sorry in advance, he says. I feel a sharp pinch of pain, and then everything goes dark. When I wake up, warm light fills my vision. Am I dreaming? I lift my head. I feel hungover. Tap, dot, tap, dot, tap, dot. I look up and realize where I am. I'm in the apartment from the basement. I go to stand and I see my clothes are different. I'm wearing heels, my hair feels curled, and I can feel lipstick on my lips. Liam is sitting on the floor in front of me, watching an old cartoon. I stand and run to the door I entered from the last time I was here. It's locked. I cry in frustration. Tap, dot, tap, dot, tap, dot. Are you okay? A tiny voice asks. I just stare at the boy and shake my head slowly. I have candy. I can give you some if you want, he states with a smile. I shake my head. No, thank you, though, I answer. I colored you this while you were sleeping. He shuffles papers in front of him before handing me a picture. It's a pink flower. Thank you, I say hesitantly. He smiles at me. I think he's waiting for me to say something else. Where is your mom? I ask him. He shrugs and turns back to the TV. I turn around and slowly step towards the kitchen. Julia's cutting vegetables for what looks like a pot roast. Soft music is playing from a radio next to her. When she hears me, she turns to me smiling. "Oh, good. You're awake. You can help me make the salad," she says, handing me a head of lettuce. What is going on?" I ask her, looking around the room. She puts down the vegetables and crosses to me. She puts her hand on my arm and smiles sadly. "I know this is hard, but trust me, it's easier to just do what he says," she tells me. "What do you mean?" I ask her. "Just trust me," she says before turning back to her cooking and that insufferable sound. Tap, dot, tap, dot, tap, dot. Whoa, why are you so calm? I ask her. She puts her knife down and turns to me, a forced smile. "Chase and I used to fight a lot. He said it wasn't working. And it wasn't, he was right, but then I was pregnant, and it was a wonderful surprise," she says, smiling at Liam, engrossed in a kid's show about a boy with a magic flute. "Liam is my life," she continues. "Chase made me an offer. He said if I stay down here, cook dinner for him every night, clean the upstairs when asked, and get along with whatever new wife he brings in. Listen to his cues. Basically be on call for all his needs. He will take care of us financially forever. I don't have any family, any education, and he's helping me." She smiles tightly. It doesn't reach her eyes. "His cues?" I ask. "Like if I'm being too loud, he will stomp his foot or something as a warning. He gets upset if I don't listen, so you'll have to learn that," she says, turning back around. "The beer bottle. He didn't accidentally knock it over." "So he expects me to just live down here?" I ask. "Oh no, not forever. Just until you're trained," she answers bluntly. Tap dot, tap dot, tap dot. "He thinks we can be the perfect wife," she whispers, putting the lid on the Dutch oven. "And besides," she says, putting the roast in the oven, "he tells me we can teach each other things. Maybe you can give Liam a sibling one day." I'm going to be sick. The clock on the wall chimes. "Oh, Chase will be here any minute. I'll pick up. You check yourself so you look perfect. He likes that." She rushes out before disappearing to the living room. In her movements, I finally see she's terrified. I hear the door begin to unlock. "Quick," she says, "clear the dishes for me off the counter." In a haze, I turn around and put the cutting board and dirty bowls in the sink. The door opens. "Honeys, I'm home," Chase's booming voice calls. Julia goes up to him immediately to offer him a kiss. I'm still standing by the counter when he approaches me, ruffling Liam's hair along the way. "And how are my favorite girls today?" he says, but directed towards me. I see Julia over his shoulder have a panicked look on her face, and I don't know why, but I want to protect her. I give him an easy smile, like I used to. "We are great. Julia and I are fast friends, and she is a whiz in the kitchen. Would you like your salad now?" I smile. His eyes sparkle in happiness. "Yes, I would, thank you." He kisses my forehead. I'm going to go wash up. Let's go, buddy. He takes Liam down the hallway to where I'm assuming the bathroom is. I'll set the table, Julia says, lightly touching my arm. Then she mouths thank you before turning away to the table. I watch her with curiosity while I hear Liam giggling down the hallway. I will save them both. I clutch the knife behind my back that Julia was chopping the vegetables with and slide it into my apron pocket while Julia's back is turned. I will save all of us. Story 4 ends here, and now we enter the fog of Story 5. Since 1976, 98% of babies have been born with a sixth sense. It has become the new normal state of the human. The parietal implant surgery should help me become normal. I am one of the unlucky ones. I spent every moment among abled with this crippling feeling of unbelonging. Sure, I had friends in my senseless community. It was not enough. And maybe it was ungrateful of me I couldn't contain this urge to be normal. Connecting to the deepest level, seeing more than on the surface. Such a mundane thing for normal people. They would pity me for the lack of something I couldn't even comprehend. Endless ruminations of my mind were taking turns with a boring reality I had as a life. My sleepy older brother mumbled through the yawn. "Sun is sure grumpy today, isn't it?" What a typical way to describe weather for the abled ones. Seems just as usual warm today to me. A little cloudy, maybe, I replied with disinterest. My brother gave me an encouraging pat on the shoulder and said, "I'm sure the parietal implant will give you everything you need." The evening before the surgery, I couldn't brush off the uneasiness. The charming smell of Bascoro's dinner was my only distraction. Almost everyone would support my decision to get the parietal implant. It was recently patented and vigorously tested in private experiments, but not yet widespread for the public. Though Bascoro would still be concerned about unnecessary risks. It was his last chance to change my mind. "It's going to be all right. I was waiting for this for so long, I can't just drop it," I argued. "It is never too late," he said and let out a sigh. "Sometimes it's hard to abandon your commitment, but are you truly sure if it is worth it?" I didn't say anything. He knew I had already made up my mind. "Though it is ultimately your choice," he added, staring into the window. I didn't have to see his face to know he had that grumpy look. I wanted to see it through. It was chilling to my bone marrow. Yet I wanted to know the truth. I was meant to feel what I was ripped off from my birth. 20 years. I had spent 20 years of my life looking for patterns in these glances, and I failed to see any. As if sixth sense perception was so deeply embedded in every moment of your life, you can't pinpoint what makes it normal, different from mine. I can admit that bitter envy is clouding my judgment, but if I don't see it through, then I will spend my years with doubts and regret. In the hospital's corridor, I heard a child's cry, which is common for sterile white rooms smelling of alcohol. A girl's parents were trying to soothe her as she left the cabinet, rubbing her temples. Getting used to something entirely new cannot be easy. though the younger the patients are, the bigger are the chances of success. It'll get better in just a couple of hours. The familiar voice of my doctor rang through the door. It opened with an inviting creak. He picked up a new pair of gloves and put them on with a loud pop of plastic in preparation for testing my senses. The flashlight checked my vision. Common odors like coffee tested my sense of smell, and some other trials were commenced for taste, hearing, and skin touch. Following the final check before the procedure, the swirls of excitement and anxiety were drowning me, and my thoughts were rushing, failing to anchor to anything calming. Anesthesia finally let me have just a moment of peace. My memories after that were fuzzy and in odd order. I woke up in what felt like only a second of restless sleep. To my surprise, I felt only a little bit of nagging pain. I couldn't form any thoughts, and in that state they let me rest. I was disturbed by my doctor after 2 hours of a feverish nap. "Time to test," he eagerly said, and got a triangle. Its metal glittered in the sun rays. Reflections were painfully blinding due to the headache. Time was moving so excruciatingly slow I couldn't wait for my honor. The doctor hit the triangle with a stick. It was silent. I looked at the doctor in confusion since I could hear steps behind the door and the wind outside. He stared into my eyes, searching for a result. I shifted uncomfortably in the chair. "I hear nothing from this triangle. Is that normal?" I asked with caution. He rubbed his chin. "That is unusual but not unheard of. Did you ever feel the sixth sense indirectly through other basic 5 senses? For example, blind can dream visually and discern light from darkness." "Even if I did, I won't be able to say specifically what," I replied. "Well, as you have been told already, the implant truly doesn't give you the sense. It helps you create new neural paths in your brain so it can imitate the feeling for you. Not only it might take a while to get used to it, but I'm very sorry to say in your case it is possible that it won't be as effective as it was expected to be at first. But we will see." I swallowed to ease the dry throat. There was a weird mix of relief and disappointment in my stomach. I knew about this possibility already, but it should have been enough to finally blend in. Though, and I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, I could almost feel the neuron paths being generated as the new information that I couldn't discern yet is being processed. The pain was minor. It was lingering in the background of my conscience. I finished dealing with the documents and the scheduling of the next checkup and went outside under a dense barrage of clouds. I could see the spots of light and shadows running on the asphalt as clouds were passing by with immense speed. Not sure what got into me when I rushed under the cover of a cafe to avoid another trail of sun. Just like when I was a kid messing around outdoors. When I could see clouds last enough to cover me all the way through to my home, I was relieved to get proper rest back home. It was barely 4 p.m. when I dropped onto my bed and fell asleep in an instant. I hoped I would sleep as if knocked out, but my dreams were a mess of unintelligible shapes and sounds. I felt so hot and uncomfortable. Delirium visions were afflicting my restless sleep. No position was right, no pillow was soft. Vicus fake awakenings were taking turns with vexing terrors. Scorching pain hit my ears. A roaring scream was tearing my mind apart. I jolted out of bed and everything was rolling before my eyes as I was trying to find balance under unending torture. The screeching was unbearable. It took seconds. A negligible amount usually, but painfully long in this moment, to get a hold of the situation and shut my ears with palms. It didn't get any quieter. My wide-opened eyes looked around in despair. Where is this torturous sound coming from, and why can I not possibly block it out even slightly? Sweat was covering my neck as I was panting from excruciating pain, still helplessly holding my hands on my ears in lack of anything else I could do. Headache was pulsating in my head as if drills were rearranging my brain matter with each thrust of pain. I crawled whimpering to the corner of the room, trying to curl up in an embryo pose. My human intelligence regressed to the basic existence of a primitive creature that could feel nothing but this unending pain. My mind was blank for an unknown amount of time, and slowly, without being conscious about it, I came to my senses and it was finally quiet. My body felt frozen and it was scary to move, almost if slight flick of a finger would bring torture back. I slowly opened my eyes and cautiously sat down, trying to process what had happened. One thing was clear. The scream I supposedly heard wasn't a sound. My thoughts were like lazy flies rumbling, trying to get a hold of the whole picture. My mind felt like a sore body on the next day of the most extensive exercise. I felt somewhat like an animal that barely escaped a predator. Yet it was lurking. I had to think fast. Maybe it was some sort of case of synesthesia, an anomalous blending of the senses. Exactly, this is what the doctor was talking about, experiencing something through another sense. I rubbed my temple that was yet to completely recover from anesthesia. What input could make me hear such an awful noise? I got up with my legs slightly shaking. I felt utterly pale and exhausted even though I had just woken up. I sighed and calmed down. It was morning and the sun was leaving stripes on the floor and my bed through the curtains. I walked to the window to close them in hope to resume my sleep and to deal with whatever that was later. I reached out and sun rays hit my finger. A scream put sharp claws around my mind. I froze and gasped. Sounds were racing through my head. My thoughts were reduced to screaming once more. 2 seconds later, I flicked it away like from a burning stove in pain. The sun. I heard the sun. Third eye has opened just to be met with blinding pain. I kneeled so I wouldn't be hit by sun rays, and my trembling hand closed the curtain with a struggle because of an uncomfortable angle. I collapsed right there on the floor under the windowsill. I was taking deep, comforting breaths, trying to sort out what had happened, what I felt. I clutched my finger in the palm, and instead of burning sensation, I heard echoes of the voices from far away. I came to the conclusion that the curtains were possibly moved by wind and sun hit my face through the opening. This is what caused me immense torture. Does everyone with sixth sense feel the sun the same way, or have I had an unsuccessful procedure with terrible complications? Truly abled people are happy under the sun. They cherish it and share it with each other. One thing is certain, I need to get it fixed. I cannot imagine living a void in the sun like some sort of vampire. Some legend might come after me and kill me in my sleep. I got up and started changing for an emergency doctor's visit. Danger wasn't immediate, and I wasn't sure if I could explain myself without being sent to a psychiatrist's checkup. And so I couldn't call an ambulance. I picked up my phone and stared at the screen with a few concerned messages from friends and family. What should I say? I was really insistent on getting this implant. It feels embarrassing to admit it wasn't a great idea after all. I decided to put it off worrying everyone until I'm sure it is serious and long-term. I copy-pasted, "I'm doing good resting, getting a checkup today. Thanks for the concern," with slight changes to each person depending on my relationship with them. I put the phone down and started brainstorming how to cover all of my skin. I put on long clothes and gloves. At first, I thought that an umbrella should cover my face and neck, but the possibility of pain hit me like a whip. A vivid memory from long ago made me shudder. Once reflected light in my car's mirror hit me in the eyes, and it almost made me lose control of the vehicle. An umbrella is not safe enough. Is it appropriate in this situation to dress like I'm actually invisible? I have bandaged my face, put a scarf around my neck, and put sunglasses on. During that, I received a call on my phone and struggled to accept the call both mentally and physically. Physically, because the touch screen is not responsive enough to my glove's material, and mentally because it was Bascoro. "Hi, how are you?" I tried to speak as nonchalantly as possible. "Are you all right? The text you sent was weird," he deadpanned. I panicked almost audibly. I couldn't possibly guess his reaction besides most likely justified scolding. "Yeah, everything is good. I'm going to the doctor right now for a checkup," I replied with hopes my voice wasn't shaking. "All right, I'll be right there." Before I could even protest, he ended the call. You can't escape the inevitable. I was never so anxious about going outside before. When I opened the door to the street fully bright from sunlight, I was covered in goosebumps. There was no open skin. First step out. I became aware of the sun rays trying to penetrate through the pores of my clothes, but even if they were reaching anywhere, thankfully I could barely feel it. If I heard something unusual, I could mix it up with the city noise. I was completely focused on the road, ignoring glances from passers-by. When I finally entered the clinic, Bascoro was already there. He was talking to a nurse, and she was visibly giving him a cold shoulder. I approached him carefully, trying to think of how to explain myself. Confusion and concern appeared at his usually steady face. "What happened?" he said with an indiscernible tone. I felt like something was stuck in my throat and realized I was on the verge of crying. If I say anything, absolutely anything, I would just burst down. "Hey, come here." he whispered softly as he slightly squeezed my arm to lead me to sit on the couch. He tried to look into my eyes through the dark lenses of my sunglasses. What happened, Lisa? I felt as if I lost something important, a connection with people I've already had. And now, I'm stuck in this limbo between abled and senseless. I cried my heart out without saying anything. He waited for me to be able to talk. I took my glasses off since they were collecting tears and removed bandages from my mouth. I kept stuttering as he was patiently looking at me. I don't know. Something went terribly wrong and I was in so much pain because I took a raspy breath. I heard the sun. I looked down at my shoes expecting a response, but he was waiting for me to continue. You are not going to lecture me? You were mad at me, weren't you? Since I told you about my plans and you were right all along. He snorted. Why are you hurting so much? You had no idea this could possibly happen. Thank you, I said with a barely intelligible and trembling voice. Thank me later when I'll make this place fix this nonsense. A mean-looking nurse heard me out while barely paying attention. She glanced at me with a mix of annoyance and disturbance. She took my measurements, suddenly swore, and walked off in a rush. I felt myself going increasingly pale. I was furious. The adult patients that were permitted to have experimental implants were possessing some sort of a curious pair of genes. One that would allow the sharpest sixth sense, and one that would apparently cause loss of sixth sense at the same time. Scientists wanted to find out why. The procedure was an enormous success, even if you don't agree with me right now. No, even if I remove the implant, neurons' connections have already been established, so you would keep your sixth sense. It is heightened activity and sensitivity compared to the general population. You should feel privileged and grateful. You might need to reassess your religion and your place here. What? I was baffled. Not to be disrespectful, but how is religion relevant here? Your attitude is the reason why it is so painful. Sun imagery is everywhere in human history and religion. Saints' halos, personification of the sun, rituals and dances. What is the sun but not a god? Powerful beyond comprehension. In size so unimaginably enormous, yet so far way out of human grasp. It will blind you if you dare look at it. It is life. It is death. It is a gentle touch of warmth and unbearable scorching heat. It can disappear to our doom at any moment, and it wouldn't be to anyone's surprise. Sun is not sentient, I said with a shaking voice. Do you think something capable of communication is not sentient? You spent your life in darkness, deaf to the call. People pitied you for your overwhelming ignorance. And now, you want to go back to your intoxicating foolishness? Too late. Accept the gift. And pray to listen closely to the sun. My blessing, my curse, I always hear it now. It is loud during the day when the sun is looming over my existence. It is quiet at night, where the moon is a pathetic reflection of the sun's light in its absence. I was going through life, oblivious to the overwhelming presence of the star. Everything I hear, feel, think is touched by the sun. It is an absolute peak of sun activity in its current 11-year cycle and the highest peak since 1976.